And we're back now with Senator Rob Portman from Ohio. Senator, thank you for joining me. You ran budgets for President George W. Bush. A lot of people blame the financial crisis on Bush tax cuts and expensive wars. Isn't it time you guys took one for the team being America?
Well, if the team is America, the issue is how to get this economy moving again, and I think that's what Republicans have been focused on. If you take the president's own words of about 8 months ago, where he said we shouldn't be increasing taxes on a weak economy, that's basically what Republicans are saying today. Let's deal with the underlying problem, which is the debt and the deficit, and we can do so. The president's speech tonight was interesting, Piers. He seemed to be talking kind of past the Congress, because as Senator Schumer just said a moment ago, there are now 2 proposals in Congress, both of which deal with the spending side, and the president instead tonight chose to rehash and relitigate the old arguments about tax increases. So I think we're focused on the right thing, which is not hurting the economy by increasing the burden of taxation, moving immediately with cuts, moving to tax reform, which is needed, getting rid of those loopholes, the deductions, the credits, and so on the president talks about over the next 6 months, and then making progress. So I think the situation is a lot more hopeful than the president described tonight, and frankly, he was talking about something that's already been decided up here in the Hill, which is we're going to focus on the spending cuts.
I mean, it was interesting to me that the president quoted Ronald Reagan, and I'll repeat the quote: would you rather reduce deficits and interest rates by raising revenue from those who are not now paying their fair share, or would you rather accept larger budget deficits, higher interest rates and higher unemployment? I think you know the answer. I mean, Reagan was the great Republican hero. He had a point, didn't he, the president, raising that quote?
Well, he did. His point was we need to reform a broken tax system. And interestingly, there have been thousands of changes to the tax system since 1986, when Ronald Reagan worked with Tip O'Neill and others to reform it. We're back where we should do it again. And economists across the board agree with this, Piers. They think that we could have a much more efficient tax system that would encourage investment and growth and jobs, and therefore economic activity and revenue. But let's do it through tax reform. Let's not, at this time, as our economy is struggling to get out of this recession, weaken it further by increasing the burden of taxation. That's the issue here. And again, what the president said tonight was appropriate perhaps a week ago. But tonight, on Capitol Hill, you have 2 proposals. One, Senator Schumer just talked about from the Democrat side. That's to reduce spending immediately over a longer term, give an extension to the debt limit. And then you have a Republican proposal, which has more cuts immediately, cuts like the ones the Democrats are proposing, and then a 6-month process for deeper cuts. So really, we're not focusing on the Hill on raising taxes. We're focusing on doing what the markets have said we must do, including these credit agencies you talked about earlier, which is to get the underlying problem settled, which is the growing spending and the deficits and the debts.
I mean, there are millions of Americans who are steaming with anger tonight, saying, who are these politicians to put this country in this precarious position? The markets are already reacting very adversely to this. The rest of the world is watching aghast at the world's #1 economy in this meltdown as you guys all argue with each other. They just want skulls cracked and a deal done. Are you guys prepared to compromise, as the president asked, and get that deal done?
Well, again, I think it's happening. Frankly, it's not happening with the president as much as it's happening with Harry Reid, who's the leader of the Senate, Democrat, and John Boehner as the Speaker of the House. They're actually much closer again than the president would indicate in his remarks. And I do think it's incredibly important that we extend the debt limit. It's absolutely necessary. It's also not sufficient. We have to deal with the underlying spending problem while we do it, or else, Pierce, we won't have addressed the very concern that Standard & Poor's, which was mentioned earlier tonight, and the other credit agencies are talking about. They will downgrade the debt unless we deal with the debt and deficit issue by controlling the spending. So I think we are lurching, you know, sometimes in a democracy it's a little messy, but lurching toward the right result, which is to actually extend, but do so with real spending cuts that are in place, and then setting up a real process to deal with tax reform and the entitlement, the structural changes in our important entitlement programs that are necessary, because those programs are not currently sustainable.
Senator Portman, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Some say that